They said he rode light and fast, a shadow with a hat brim and a silk scarf, a whisper that moved from gulch to gulch on the breath of men who dug for gold and found hard luck instead. Some called him Bandit, some called him Hero, most called him by a name that did not sit still, Joaquin, the same name that fit too many faces in the California hills. Out east, stories wore coats and neckties. In 1853, California's stories wore dust. The beginning people liked to tell of Joaquin Murrieta followed the shape of grievance. He and his young wife had come with the rush, chasing a dream staked to gravel bars and river bends. The mountains cut the sky to ribbons, and the water ran cold over gold that gleamed like promises. But the promise did not extend to everyone. After the war, this new American state treated Mexican miners like trespassers in their own country. A foreign miner's tax reached into pockets already thin. Rough men with rope in their voices cleared claims by threat, or worse, and the law often arrived only to shrug. In the tale, Murrieta was beaten, and his wife dishonored, his brother killed. The details changed depending on who was listening and who needed what from the story. What stayed steady was the turn, grief into fury, fury into the saddle. If you believed the camp rumors, he took to the brush with friends who wore his name like a banner. The legislature itself would write it down that spring. The 5 Joaquins, an oath-bound gang said to include Murrieta, Valenzuela, Ocamorenia, Botelier, and Carrillo. They were blamed for robberies that cascaded across the Sierra foothills, for horse raids that stripped whole ranchos bare, for shootings that left men staring at a sky no longer theirs. Some said he spared the poor and punished the cruel, that he took gold back from the kind of men who took first. Some said he cut throats for coin. Both things cannot be true, but both things were believed. The state made belief into bounty. In the spring of 1853, Governor John Bigler signed a law creating a small mounted force to chase the Joaquins, California Rangers, 32 riders under a captain with a trimmed mustache and a reputation sharpened in the Mexican-American War. His name was Harry Love, and he rode the way law sometimes does, hard, impatient, and very sure of itself. His men fanned out through country dry enough to turn a man's throat into tinder, following the rumors the way thirsty mules follow the shade of a moving cloud. Murrieta's legend galloped faster than any horse. He was said to cross the San Joaquin Valley by moonlight, with stolen mustangs swirling around him like a living dust devil. He was said to gift coins to widows, to slip food to hungry vaqueros, to leave notes tacked to trees for sheriffs who could not catch him. A campfire far from any town might burn low, and a voice would slide out of the dark. I saw him, hand on the pommel like a gentleman, pistols high, eyes black as tar. A different voice would follow. My cousin's cousin saw him too, and he wasn't handing out charity. This is how a man becomes a mirror. The Rangers lassoed one fact after another, and none of them held long. They tracked a band to the Coast Range canyons west of the valley, to the dry spine that throws its shadow over the San Joaquin. Summer put its palm down on the land. Grass went the color of old straw. Every hoofprint set off a puff the hue of tarnished gold. In late July, at a place old maps call the Arroyo de Cantua, Love's scouts found smoke where there shouldn't have been any. Small cookfires tucked into the folds of the ravine, the hush of men who had learned to breathe quiet. What happened in that heat-filled day has been told a dozen different ways, all of them loud. Love's version says his rangers rode in quick and hard, catching the band before they could scatter. Shouting, gunfire, the hollow thump of bullets striking dry bank. One man went down clawing at his chest, another fell as if someone had cut his strings. A figure with a silk band about his head broke from the thicket and spurred for the open. A rider who sat his horse like he and the animal had been born from the same bolt of leather. A ranger's musket cracked. The horse screamed and folded. The rider tumbled and tried to run. He did not get far. They said Three-Fingered Jack was there too, the outlaw with 2 missing fingers on his left hand, the scar-shy henchman the newspapers loved because his nickname fit easily into headlines. He took a bullet, cursed everyone present, and tried to shoot back until someone's pistol spoke louder. When the smoke cleared, the rangers handled the dead the way the summer handled scent, roughly, efficiently, and with a purpose men tell themselves they can live with. Proof, that was the problem. The state had set a reward for Murrieta's capture, dead or alive, and proof meant money and the satisfaction of a frightened countryside. Love's men took a knife to the question. From one body they sawed off a head, black hair still bound with a silk cloth. From another they cut a hand with 2 fingers gone. The trophies went into a jar of spirits and a tin, respectively, and were packed the way you pack fragile things you don't want to look at closely. They carried the jar to towns that wanted to see justice and a show. In Stockton, in San Francisco, in Marysville, and the mining camps between, folks paid coins to gawk at the severed head of Joaquin Murrieta, the West's new Robin Hood, and at the withered hand that must belong to Three-Fingered Jack. Men nodded and said the jawline matched the descriptions. Women shivered and stood longer than they meant to, the way you can't look away from a fire. Children woke that night crying, and their mothers blamed the rangers and then blamed themselves for taking them. But even while the jar made its rounds, a stubborn rumor rode beside it. Murrieta's friends swore the dead man was not Joaquin at all, but a cousin, or a stranger with the same scarf, or a poor devil caught in the wrong arroyo on the wrong day. They said their Joaquin had moved south, or fled east, or slipped across the border ahead of the rangers, or turned his bridle toward the Pacific and vanished into fog. Years later, someone claimed to have seen him in Sonora, older and quieter, living under a slow name that held no heat. A legend always arranges a back door for itself. Love filed his reports. The legislature paid the reward. Newspapers printed woodcuts of the head in the jar with captions that sounded like verdicts. The jar itself lingered for years in odd corners. A saloon shelf, a museum cabinet, some say a side room at a police station where rookies were dared to look. When the great earthquake and fire tore San Francisco in 1906, much went to ash and twisted glass. If you want a neat ending, you can say the head was lost there, the spirits boiled away, the proof turned to steam. If you prefer a different poetry, you can say the frontier refuses to keep facts in jars. So what do we know when the shouting is finished? We know there was a Murrieta who rode the years of the gold rush, and that enough men feared him and admired him to turn him into a banner they could march under or hide behind. We know that the rangers found a camp in the Cantua country and left with bodies, and with the kind of proof a rough time accepts. We know that the death, like the life, was disputed in all the ways that matter to people who need stories to square with their hurts. If you were poor and pushed aside, the legend handed you a sword. If you were robbed on a lonely road, it handed you a target. On the old trail west of the valley, the wind still threads the canyons with the rattle of dry leaves and a hint of horse sweat that isn't there. Names bounce between the walls until they're only sound. Joaquin, Jack, Love. If you ride there at dusk, you can believe you're hearing the last gallop or the last pursuit, or just the land telling itself the tale again because it likes the way it fits. A man can be many things at once, a husband and a thief, a victim and a judge, a ghost and a headline, and a country just finding its laws will use all the versions it needs until one sticks. Maybe the truest ending is the one the rangers could not bottle. The heat haze over the arroyo, the smell of powder fading, the feel of a silk band in the hand of a man who wishes he didn't have to hold it, and the question that won't quit. Did we stop a murderer, or did we just cut a story in half? Out on deserted trails, where fences run out and memory keeps riding, that's as close to an answer as the frontier ever gives. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.